Okay, so chapter 8 is great if you're looking at childhood, because we've got turning points, we've got loss of innocence, and we've also got a really crucial chapter in terms of the whole narrative. It's the one that's told from Robbie's perspective, where he writes this letter that he accidentally gives to Bryony that ends up sort of setting everything else in the novel in motion. The first thing I want to draw your attention to is on page 80, where it describes Robbies Room. We're about a third of the way down the page, and he describes his bed as being unmade, and he also has fears of Cecilia becoming unreachable. So we get two words again, prefixed by un. We get exactly the same thing when Cecilia's room is described. So we've got a link through language between Robbie and Cecilia, but we've also got the fact that that link is established by that prefix un, because their relationship is sort of unfulfilled. It's unsustained because it's broken off. So what we get there is a nice linking, but also that idea that what links them is the fact that ultimately their relationship doesn't get that chance to flourish that, you know, we might expect. We get another reference to that fact at the bottom of page 82, when Robbie looks at a picture of himself dressed as Malvolio in Twelfth Night by Shakespeare. Now, Malvolio is sort of set up by the other people he works with. He's left a letter that he is led to believe comes from Olivia, who's his mistress or his boss. But it's not, it's written by the others, and it professes her undying love to him. And he reads it and he thinks, right, okay, and he dresses in these yellow stockings to try and impress her, and then, you know, goes and professes his own undying love to Olivia. He's thought of as being insane and locked in this dark room, and although this is a comedy, the scene where Malvolio is sort of punished becomes quite dark and seems to go, you know, far beyond what we might expect from a comedy. So just like with Robbie, what we get is a letter, a misunderstanding, and then a severe punishment. So yet again is that other reference that maybe what Robbie hopes isn't actually going to happen. Just like Malvolio, you know, he's going to be punished in a way that is excessive. So he's dressed as Malvolio in a play, but actually unwittingly he's playing Malvolio now. He's going to become the Malvolio character. We get an explanation on sort of about a third of the way down page 84 of something that Cecilia's already referred to. It really annoyed her. Basically, Robbie was walking barefoot around the house, and she thought he was doing it to emphasise the fact that he's just a poor servant boy. Here we find out that actually what he was doing was he was getting a bit self-conscious. He had dirty shoes, so he took those off, and he worried that his socks smelled, so he took those off as well. So again, that idea that the same scene has been witnessed by both of them, but interpreted totally differently. So it's not just Bryony by the fountain who gets things wrong, it's all of us. And that's explained sort of towards the bottom of page 84, when Robbie, you know, dwells on the fact that he's sort of like a character that might be in a Keats poem or a Shakespeare sonnet or Petrarch. So he's seeing himself as fitting into all of these other stories. There's the idea, isn't there, by McEwan, that all of us fundamentally see ourselves as characters in a story, and that goes throughout Atonement until ultimately at the end it turns out that actually everything was just, you know, part of this story that was written by Bryony. He has a few goes at writing the letter, but then the one that he goes with is at the very top of page 86, and suddenly, after this very sort of innocent opening perhaps, okay, this very sort of Victorian style opening, we get the letter, and the shocking language of that really sort of stands out. Very, very top of page 86 really represents that loss of innocence. The word that Bryony sees, you know, obviously changes her perspective on pretty much everything, okay? But I think also there's the idea that a loss of innocence isn't always necessarily bad. This loss of innocence allows Robbie and Cecilia to sort of get together, and actually that is undermined by Bryony, okay? But it's not as simple as, you know, innocence being good and a loss of innocence being bad. And then what we get onto a little bit later, okay, in the novel, page 91, so quite a bit later in the chapter, that I think is worth looking at, is that on the top two lines, it's explained that one word contained everything he felt and explained why he was to dwell in this moment later: freedom. So that one word sums up sort of why this moment would be so important to Robbie later on. Okay, now this is like that word bound that we've had in the novel before. Okay, a book is bound, but then therefore the characters are bound to behave in a certain way, and it's set up here as well. It's only because of what happens later to Robbie that he sees this moment the way that he does. He is bound. Bryony has bound the book. She's bound what's going to happen to him, and he is therefore bound and trapped in this moment. He's free here, but he's not going to be free for very long. A few lines after that, on page 91, there was a story he was plotting with himself as the hero. So again, that idea that fundamentally we think in stories, okay? We see ourselves as characters in stories. On page 93, about halfway down, Robbie sees a white shape, so almost exactly halfway down that page he sees a white shape. That's Bryony walking towards him, so again we get Innocence, don't we? The white shape of Bryony. And this is where he sort of sees that and gives her the wrong letter. So McEwan's emphasising that innocence there, Bryony's innocence. On the one hand, that innocence is the problem, isn't it? Because she doesn't understand this letter and she doesn't understand what's behind it. On the other hand, that innocence is important, and that's what's lost later in the novel. About a third of the way down page 94, he's given her the letter and he realises what he's done, and it's described that Bryony had already turned and was running across the bridge. So there's a bridge again. Great turning point here. She's looking at that letter, she's got the letter, everything's going to change, the innocence is going to be lost, and she's running across the bridge as it happens, okay? So another bridge, another turning point, another loss of innocence. Interestingly, just as a bit of trivia, towards the bottom of page 94, it's referred to that that Robbie has left the letter that he intended to give to Cecilia, the more sort of innocent letter, on his copy of Grey's Anatomy, on a picture actually of a vagina. Now that's a real book, Grey's Anatomy, but the reference given is wrong. Okay, so the image that is described is not on the page that is described here. And I think again there's that idea that it's not as simple as going, oh, this is fiction and then there's the real story behind it, okay? The whole point of this novel is that we're fundamentally telling our lives through stories. There is no sort of true story and fake story. We fundamentally understand our own lives through stories. Robbie does it, as we've seen here. Cecilia does it, Bryony does it, and as readers we do it. We want the happy ending of the Trials of Arabella rather than, you know, the grim reality. We're all seeing stories all the time. And then right at the end of this chapter, okay, we say that the light that Robbie sees narrowed to nothing as she entered the house and the door was closed behind her. Great little symbol right at the end. That innocence is going, or if not gone, and the door is closed behind Bryony. Okay, she's crossed the bridge, the door is closed, the innocence is over, and things are now going to change. Okay, so chapter 8 for that reason is absolutely crucial within Atonement.